Here's a map that shows the European global dominance that existed from the early 17th century to the middle of the 20th century. At the same time, there's a shift in power from the Mediterranean Sea area of Europe, Mediterranean Europe, to the northwestern portions of Europe, which are, France, Britain, and the Netherlands, and eventually North Central Europe with the rise of Prussia. And if you look at this map, you'll see that Spain is yellow, and it still has a lot of control over a lot of the Western Hemisphere in 1800, but in short order that's going to change a great deal. Here we see a map of part of Europe anyway. In the 17th to early 18th centuries, some states are going to organize politically to be dominant. Those middle 18th century states are going to be Great Britain, France, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. And when you look at this, there's an area that says Brandenburg in green in eastern Germany, and then there's a place in what is right by, kind of surrounded by the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. That's Prussia. Brandenburg, Prussia will become basically what we think of as Prussia, and it's going to be the nucleus for a new German state that will appear sometime later. So that's important to understand. Prussia is not in Russia. Very important to understand that. Many times I'll have kids get those confused, Prussia and Russia. Prussia is basically in Germany and Poland, is the way to look at Prussia, not in Russia. States that fell away from those major dominant states that are going to appear are going to be Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, and the Ottoman Empire. I mean, Sweden's a latecomer anyway with Gustavus Adolphus. After he passes away, they just go straight into kind of a decline. Spain and Portugal are going to essentially have a significant problem because of their lack of adaptability to the influx of silver and other riches that they gain from their empires. And because the Netherlands and France and Britain are going to develop more nimble, sleeker ships and be able to challenge them for control of the seas. So Spain and Portugal are going to drop because of that. Also, Spain wastes a lot of energy in trying to keep Europe Catholic, spends a ton of money, and wastes a lot of manpower on that. Poland, really it's in a position where it's just difficult for it to take advantage of the new Atlantic economy that is developing. This is an important reason to see these northwestern countries expanding in power and so on, while the Mediterranean countries are going to weaken, is because the economy is going to shift away from the Mediterranean Sea. Trade is going to shift away from the Mediterranean Sea and shift to the Atlantic Ocean. The Ottoman Empire, of course, has all sorts of problems that are going to catch up to it. So why did they rise? Military power, better navies, better organized militaries, economic power, sophisticated financial systems, the London Stock Exchange, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, this kind of stuff, and colonial power for some of them. The opportunity also was presented by the Peace of Westphalia. The Peace of Westphalia was a major defeat for the idea of German unity, and it was definitely a defeat for Spanish power. So now we get to the Netherlands, the Golden Age to decline. Here's a map of the United Provinces. These 7 provinces in the United Provinces, they emerged in 1572. In the 17th century, they're going to fight naval wars with England in 1672, which is in the 17th century. Louis XIV will invade, but William of Orange will lead a victorious coalition. Here you see a map that shows this Franco-Dutch war that coincides with the Anglo-Dutch war, and you see the movement of Louis XIV's troops. William of Orange will be made King of England in the Glorious Revolution. This is kind of interesting. Netherlands is a republic. It's mistrustful of monarchy. But what we see is, in war, it will look to the House of Orange, which William of Orange is, of course, from the House of Orange, and he's their greatest leader, essentially. But the House of Orange is going to be this very powerful force in Dutch politics. Another thing about the Netherlands is it's tolerant. The Calvinist Reformed Church is the official religion, but there are plenty of other Protestants who are not part of the Calvinist Reformed Church. Catholics are able to practice in the Netherlands, and even Jews are able to practice in the Netherlands. Many Jews moved from, say, Poland to the Netherlands because of this practice. The Dutch are famous for urban prosperity in their cities. They have a great deal of economic success in the 17th century. The population is highly urban. And of course, part of that is it's a small country. It doesn't have a whole lot of land to begin with. So for it to prosper the way it has is to a large degree because of its financial power, its commercial power, its shipping. And here we see a picture of Amsterdam. Another reason why they have so much economic prosperity is their innovative agriculture, land reclamation. They drain land, they build levees to keep the water out, and they import grain rather than raise their own grain for food. They buy it from other people, and they use their farmland to raise cattle and for dairy. Dairy products, cheese and milk, and they raise cash crops. Here we see fields of tulips and tulips up close, and they also fish for herring, and they sell these things to other countries and buy staple foods like wheat from other countries. They have well-developed commercial and financial sectors. Their shipping was famous during this time period. In the 17th century especially, shipbuilding, excellent. They built ships for other countries, for example, and they had a colonial empire, basically Portugal's empire. They just went in with their improved ships and just snatched them away from Portugal. The East Asia Spice Islands were Portuguese territories, essentially, controlled by the Portuguese. I'm sure the people in Spice Islands, the Indies, didn't really like to see it that way. And the Dutch East Indies Company is going to be this company formed by powerful merchants in the Netherlands to make themselves wealthy and make their country wealthy. They will manage to, basically, through force of arms on the seas, take Portuguese territories away. And here we see a map, a depiction of Dutch Batavia, which is modern-day North Jakarta, and this is a map from 1652. Now, the Dutch will decline economically. After William III, William of Orange's death, William III of England, there won't be a strong leader coming out of the House of Orange or anywhere else, really. The British will be able to usurp the naval supremacy of the Dutch. After all, the British islands are much larger, the population's greater, and the technology is just as good as what the Dutch have. So that's going to be a problem. Then also, many countries are going to engage in direct trade because their shipping will improve. So they won't need the Dutch to ship for them quite as much. And fishing decline, which your book doesn't explain at all, and I really have done no research whatsoever on what happened to the herring during this time period. But still, Amsterdam will continue to be important in banking well into the 18th century. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange is an example. I believe now it's basically merged with the Brussels Stock Exchange. But and here we see the building that was the VOC, the Dutch East Indies Company's headquarters for quite some time. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange was started by the Dutch East Indies Company. I wouldn't be surprised to find out the details of its beginnings were hammered out, discussed by the leaders of the Dutch East Indies Company out of that building. There are two models of European political development: parliamentary monarchy and political absolutism. The picture to the left and below is Westminster Palace, where Parliament meets, And then we see the Palace of Versailles to the right and a little bit above. That was the headquarters, essentially, for Louis XIV's absolute monarchy. What allowed this? Well, military innovations in organization, weapons, and tactics increased the cost of war. In traditional revenue streams, money coming in was not enough, so monarchs that built revenue up independently of aristocracies and assemblies were able to achieve absolute rule. France was able to do this. The English monarchy, though, it failed to build permanent independent revenue, so therefore parliamentary monarchy ensued, or at least was maintained. This is a somewhat surprising development from the viewpoint of 1600 AD, because the Stuart kings in England were really interested in absolutism. The monarchy was viewed very well, favorably by the people, and Parliament only met when it was summoned by the king. France is surprising as well. Here we see a time period in the 1600s where the French monarchy is weak. There are religious wars. Nobles had their own armies. Think about it, the decision to allow Huguenots to build fortifications in their own cities and towns. That should tell you just how decentralized in some ways France was. And there are noble rebellions in the mid-17th century, in the mid-1600s. Here's a depiction of the aristocratic-led Fronde, which was one of the revolts against Louis XIV.